All right, welcome back to the Colorado River Fire Training Network. Today we're going to cover for anybody with report reviewing authority how to do an officer's review of a report. So this will be the initial review that happens after the report has been completed in New World. So this is, company officers, chief officers that are doing the initial review on the report. So for today, we're going to review an EMS report made by firefighter paramedic Landon Churchill. First thing that I like to do right off the bat is a NIFRS check. That tells you right away if there's anything egregious that needs to be corrected. If the list is long, I typically stop right there and send it for correction. Let them work on those errors, and then you can get back into it again later. When it comes back like this window says it's complete, you don't need to close the form. You still have work to do. Next thing is right on your basic detail page. What you're verifying when you review the report is that the station and the response zone match. We'll get into the apparatus later on in the call, but you want your station and the town essentially to be the same. So right here in your quadrant, Silt Rifle 6143, the first two numbers, as you guys are all aware, 61 is the primary response area. That needs to match the station that responds. Actions taken need to be completed. When you're reviewing reports, if it was a fire-based incident, the dollar losses and values section needs to be filled in. That is required on fire-based reports, but on EMS reports or other reports, it obviously is not. Moving on to the next tab, the location needs to be completed as accurately as possible. This includes the venue, city, state, and zip. Oftentimes you'll get an error where the venue doesn't auto-populate your city, state, or zip. So when you're reviewing these reports, you can correct that by resetting your venue, possibly going to no venue or resetting the actual venue that it's in. And if that doesn't work, you can try to click override. Sometimes that helps clear the error. That's not worth kicking back to people when you're reviewing these reports. Sometimes it's just tied to an address. Also, you need to make sure the property use is filled in. So whatever occupancy you're in, you need to find the most appropriate property use for that facility. Incident times. Reviewing these reports, these also need to be completed as thoroughly as possible. I know it's a little bit tedious, but our turnout times are something that we're tracking. So 60 seconds out the door for EMS calls, 80 seconds for fire, 90% of the time. Those are data points that we're tracking. So as much as possible, try to make sure that the times that are inputted into the report are accurate. That may not be worth kicking back for correction, but it's something that I want everybody that's reviewing reports to be paying attention to so that we can try to take care of it on the front end later on. Special studies, when appropriate, you need to make sure that they're filled in as well, like burn permits, things like that. Apparatus need to be completed. This includes both the lights, sirens, response mode, as well as the actions taken if known. So what I like to tell people is fill these reports out as completely as possible. That goes for report reviewers as well. When you're reviewing these reports, you want to look at it and make sure that they are done as thoroughly and completely as possible. It's only going to help protect us later on. Some of those boxes the reviewer can correct. Other boxes require the user to correct them. This times is the same as before. We want to make sure that they're as accurate and thorough as possible. We are tracking those data points. Personnel, when you review any report, you want to make sure that your personnel are listed. Actions taken are not required, but you do need your personnel to be listed. You might also see up here under apparatus, sometimes you might see a 4,000 or a 6,000. Don't automatically delete those if you see them. What you need to do is investigate those and make sure that they don't have personnel attached to them. The 4,000 and 6,000 is the only way to do standby. For instance, in the event of an all-call where we have people coming back in to manage the system, or we have a crew specifically managing a response zone for an incident, sometimes they'll end up being attached to the 4,000 or 6,000 numbered apparatus. So don't automatically delete those. Review it, investigate it, and find out whether or not it's valid. If it's not valid, then you can delete it. Person involved, if applicable, you want to make sure that's filled in. This is contact information for us. It's follow-up information for us. It's also tied to the bigger New World system. And this is where we're able to start trending and knowing whether or not we're going and seeing frequent flyers. Authorization needs to be completed. Officer in charge, member making report, things like that. That's all pretty standard boilerplate stuff. On a fire-based report, your remarks box, this is your narrative. So this is where your narrative needs to be put in. Please do that in a Word document. I know that this isn't how to do a report, but that will save the reviewer time later on, because reviewing the reports, reviewing the narratives specifically, we need to be looking at spelling, grammar, punctuation, things like that. And if it's done in a Word document, it'll catch those things. Typing the report into the New World box here isn't going to catch those things nearly as well. So, but reviewing, you're looking for spelling, grammar, and punctuation. That is true on an EMS report also. When we get to the EMS tab, you're going to be looking at a lot of those same things. So as a general rule of thumb, when reviewing reports, you want to make sure that there are no yellow boxes left over. That's not a 100% rule, but it's a good way to approach your report. So for an EMS report, like what we're looking at here, you open up your patient information on the Fire Incident EMS tab, and what you're looking for is that everything is completely filled out. You're also looking that the person involved matches the person listed here, if it is in fact the same person. Age is important to look at. And care, procedures documented, PCR, level of provider, those things need to be filled out as well. As long as that all looks good, you can cancel out of that and then click on your patient care report. This will take us into the EMS tab. Now, we don't have the NMSIS check to our advantage anymore when we're reviewing these reports, so we're going to look at this just a little bit differently. Again, you want to make sure that there's no yellow boxes. And then there's some very specific things that we need to look for as company officers when we are reviewing these reports in an effort to help out the CQI folks later on when they're looking at the CQI stuff. In summary, they're looking at the medicine. We are looking at everything else. So again, name, age, that all needs to be pretty consistent. With your response, you want to make sure that you have your tabs completed, which you can note with the green check marks across the top. You also want to make sure that there's some specific boxes that are filled in. Destination mileage, that's the transport distance. You want to make sure that that box is filled in, if at all possible. Your personnel on the call need to be filled in and consistent with what's listed on the NFIRS side of the report. Your response times, this goes back with the NFIRS side as well. You want your turnout times and your response times to be accurate and listed appropriately. And then any delays. This is important just for our own information and our own ability to overcome patient care delays in the future. For the situation in green, you're looking for green check marks, making sure that there's nothing yellow on the screen, and you want your chief complaint to be listed right there. So you can open that up and look at it. Chest pain is the chief complaint for this patient. When they're appropriate, the cardiac arrest box may be filled out. You just need to look and make sure that it's appropriate to the call. If it's not appropriate, this is one of the areas where you will still have yellow boxes that are not checked or completed. And it's just because there wasn't any CPR or additional info that happened on the call. Your medical history, excuse me. Really all you're looking for is that these boxes are checked in. A lot of people are doing the medical history narrative. I recommend that you do the medical history narrative. As a reviewer, I recommend that you look for the medical history narrative. But understand that sometimes that won't be filled in. When you get to the narrative itself, again, just like a fire report, you're looking for spelling, grammar, and punctuation. I cannot emphasize how important this is. These are the documents that will take us to court and will make us look like masters of our craft or make us look like fools, depending on how these narratives are written. So please take the time to read your report and correct what is needed. The number one thing that I kick back reports for is spelling, grammar, and punctuation. So you want to read your entire report. I'm not going to actually read it right now. You can hopefully get the emphasis on the matter. But what you're looking for as a reviewer when you are reading these reports is that, again, spelling, grammar, punctuation are taken care of and accurate. And also that the things that are listed within the report match the tabs that are checked on the report. So interventions, medications, vital signs, chief complaint, impression, things like that. Those are the things that we're looking for that we need to make sure match on the tabs later on. So an example here is in the treatment. There's aspirin, an IV, nitro, fentanyl, and saline. So when we get in here, we're going to open up our vitals, and you're just looking to make sure that the vitals are accurate. ECG is done. Interventions. There's our IV that we read about in the report. Here are our medications that we read about in the narrative of the report. So you got nitro, fentanyl, aspirin. You can open all those up, make sure that it's filled out to your satisfaction. Again, no yellow boxes and green check marks across the top. Your outcome, again, you want to make sure that everything's completed. If any of this right here is accurate, it'll bring up the option to fill that out. And then finally, additional information. Member making report, officer in charge, that should match on the NIFRS side. And as a reviewer, you're looking for documents. This report does not have documents. Everything else looks like it's pretty well done. What that means is we're going to have to send this report back for corrections needed because there's no documentation provided. So when you're done with this, you can get out of it. You don't save. As a reviewer, you do not save the report. All you do is review the report. And once it finally loads, you can click on the report anywhere within the line, address, name. I usually click on the name. Come up here to the top menu, hit review. We're going to set it at 0. We're going to set it for corrections needed. And then in the comments box, we're going to tell them why. So this report is being kicked back for no documents being attached. And there we go. No documents attached, please correct. Report is now reviewed, and you can move on to the next one. Thanks for your time.